Before you listen, if you enjoy the stories and want to hear more, then please consider subscribing. Most of you listening aren't subscribed, so please take this time to subscribe. Turn on notifications so you'll never miss a story and be the first to hear. You'll also be supporting me. Thank you. I'm typically a huge fan of Airbnb when I travel. I like getting to stay in a more unique, homey space rather than some generic hotel room. But I'll probably stick to boring old hotels for a while after the unsettling experience I recently had in an Airbnb. My friend and I had booked a place for a weekend trip to Savannah. The rental was this cute little Victorian cottage not too far from the main downtown area. Seemed perfect for exploring the city by day and relaxing back at the house at night. We got there on a Friday evening and did the whole routine of dropping bags, picking rooms, etc. The cottage was just as cute inside as it looked online, decorated with antique-looking furniture. It felt homey yet just impersonal enough that it didn't seem like we were invading someone's space. My friend and I headed downtown for dinner and bar hopping to kick off our fun weekend. The first night was great, but things took a turn once we returned to the Airbnb cottage around midnight. We were winding down and I was in the bathroom washing my face when suddenly the overhead light went out. I froze momentarily, thinking a fuse had blown, but then I heard footsteps creaking outside in the hall. I hurried out of the bathroom to find my friend, who looked as freaked out as I felt. Neither of us had left the living room, so someone else was definitely in the house and had turned the light off from outside the bathroom. We bolted to the front door to get the hell out of there. My heart felt like it was going to pound through my chest. But just as we reached the door, the deadbolt locked from the other side. Someone was inside with us and had locked us in. We both started screaming for help and desperately jostling the door handle to no avail. The sound of heavy footsteps grew louder as the intruder approached down the hall toward where we were panicked and trapped. In a burst of adrenaline-fueled panic, my friend and I started ramming our shoulders against the door, still violently jiggling the handle. Sheer terror took over as we realized this psycho had us confined in the cottage and could be armed or planning who knows what. By some miracle, between the two of us frantically throwing our weight against the door, it burst open just as the intruder entered the hall. We tumbled out onto the porch and made a beeline for the street, screaming at the top of our lungs. I was in such a shocked state that I didn't even look back, just kept running until we were a block away where some concerned locals called us a cab. As we hysterically recounted what happened, they urged us to call the police once we got to our hotel. The cops showed up quickly and were very kind and helpful, but also seemed somewhat puzzled. Apparently, there had never been any reports of intruders or break-ins associated with that property. They assured us they would search the Airbnb thoroughly and have patrol cars monitor the street as an extra precaution. But the more we told them, the more doubtful they seemed that someone had been inside. Exhausted and rattled by the terrifying ordeal, my friend and I didn't know what to think. Had we imagined an intruder in our panicked state somehow? The slamming footsteps and locked door had felt so real in the moment, though. Despite the skepticism of police that someone had broken in, my friend and I cut our trip short and felt relieved to get on a plane back home the next day. The cozy Airbnb cottage had turned from charming to chilling in an instant. In the aftermath, the owner and Airbnb staff profusely apologized for our disturbing experience. They refunded our stay and assured us their properties were safe, but neither could explain the eerie occurrences that had left us running for our lives. For a while after getting home, I couldn't stop replaying those panicked moments trying to break down the door as some menacing figure approached us. I had never been so terrified. I was convinced we were about to be murdered or abducted. As time passed, my friend and I tried to reason away what had happened. Maybe it was an old house, and the footsteps and sounds had a rational explanation. But deep down, the primal fear we had both felt told me this was more than just an overactive imagination. Whatever sinister presence was in that cottage with us is not something I ever want to encounter again. It shook me in my core to feel so trapped and hunted down by an unseen entity toying with us. I still can't bring myself to book another Airbnb after that horrific night. When I travel now, it's strictly bland chain hotels for me where other people are always around. Sure, they lack the charm and character of a home rental, but also the suffocating terror of being locked inside with a sinister intruder. I'm just grateful my friend and I somehow escaped unharmed and made it home in one piece. But we will forever be bonded by surviving that nightmare scenario together. It makes me paranoid imagining who else might have been confined in that cottage, unable to break free like we did. So, fellow travelers, learn from me and trust your gut if something feels off about an Airbnb once you check in, and have an escape plan if things go south. You never know what might be lurking inside some of these beautiful old homes or apartment listings until you're already behind closed doors. Your safety should come first. I'm sticking to big corporate hotels from now on when I'm on the road. Give me a boring, predictable room over the potential terror of an Airbnb intruder any day. Call me paranoid, but I know what I experienced, and it's something I never intend to repeat. Alright, buckle up guys, because I've got a pretty crazy Airbnb story to share. This haunted rental situation definitely made me way more cautious about booking Airvans going forward. My husband Tom and I were headed to New Orleans for our 5-year anniversary. I found this gorgeous Victorian-style Airbnb in the Garden District that looked perfect for our week-long stay. In the photos, it was beautifully decorated with a luxurious bathtub and canopy bed. Real romantic anniversary vibes. When we arrived, the house was just as pretty as pictured. Dana, the host, gave us a quick tour and some restaurant recommendations before heading out. Once she left, Tom and I unpacked and settled into the master bedroom upstairs. That first night was great. We hit some jazz clubs on Frenchman Street and feasted on beignets at Café du Monde. Exhausted from our flight and a long day exploring, we fell asleep instantly. The next morning, I was up before Tom and hopped in the shower. As I was shampooing my hair with my eyes closed, the stereo speakers in the bathroom suddenly blasted to life, making me scream. The volume was cranked all the way up, playing this eerie opera music. I hurriedly rinsed off and shut off the music. Tom came rushing in to see what was wrong. I told him the stereo had turned on full blast by itself while I was showering. We figured maybe the host had it connected to her phone and started playing something by accident. Strange, but no big deal. The rest of that day we explored the French Quarter and went on a spooky cemetery tour. We joked about ghosts haunting our Airbnb when the shower incident came up again. Tom suggested the phantom stereo blast was Dracula telling me to scrub behind my ears. We laughed it off. That night, as we were settling into bed with the lights off, the speakers in the bedroom started blasting static and garbled voices. We bolted upright, terrified by the sudden cacophony. Tom slapped wildly at the bedside table lamp to turn it on. Heart racing, I lunged for the cord and ripped it out of the wall socket. The disembodied voices and static stopped. We sat there panting, flooded with adrenaline. Clearly this was more than just a tech glitch. Something sinister was going on. Needless to say, we didn't sleep well that night. The next morning, we told Dana what had happened. She seemed really confused and apologetic. She promised to get an electrician in to check the wiring right away. The electrician found nothing wrong with the speakers or electronics. Dana gave us a partial refund and offered to let us cancel our remaining nights. But with nothing else available last minute on our anniversary trip, we reluctantly stayed. The next few nights were peaceful, until the last night of our trip. I was jolted awake at 3 a.m. by the bedroom TV turning itself on to static. As I fumbled for the remote, a blurry black and white image appeared on screen. It was a disturbing shot of someone's legs dangling, as if they were hanging by their neck from the ceiling. The volume suddenly cranked up to full blast with that same garbled voice from the other night. Tom and I were frozen in sheer terror as the graphic image lingered on screen. The voice became more distorted until it was this shrill screeching sound, like something human. Tom finally snapped out of it and ripped the cord from the wall. We turned out all the lights and stayed awake, clutching each other the rest of the night, silently weeping and shaking with fear. We left the next morning without saying goodbye to Dana. Once home, I researched the property history and learned a man had taken his life by hanging himself in the master bedroom back in 1962. No wonder that horrific image appeared. The TV was somehow channeling the poor soul's tragic demise before our eyes. I complained to Airbnb about the property being haunted without it being disclosed. They refunded our whole trip and gave us credits, but seemed skeptical it was anything paranormal related. I'm just glad we escaped that evil entity without it escalating further. Needless to say, Tom and I will never stay in an Airbnb again after that traumatizing ordeal. Whatever malevolent presence was in that house made itself known to us in an increasingly terrifying way over our trip. It was like it was slowly gaining power through our fear. I've never felt more unsettled than having those disturbing paranormal events play out while being trapped in a stranger's home far from our own. It felt like some unseen force was toying with us for its own twisted amusement. Leaving that cursed mansion was one of the biggest reliefs of my life. So listeners, learn from my warning and be very choosy about which Airbnbs you stay in, especially in a city as haunted as New Orleans. Don't become another victim of whatever wicked spirits, ghosts, or demons call some of these homes and apartments their domain. Your vacation should be relaxing, not the stuff with nightmares. I'll never forget that weekend getaway at the cabin in the woods. It was supposed to be a fun, relaxing trip with friends, but it quickly turned into a nightmare that still haunts me to this day. We found the cabin listing on Airbnb. The photos showed a cozy log cabin nestled amongst towering pine trees. It looked perfect for our group of 5 to 2 bedrooms, a loft, a big living area with a stone fireplace, and a fully stocked kitchen. The listing boasted floor-to-ceiling windows to let in lots of natural light and views of the dense forest surroundings. And best of all, it was super affordable at just $100 a night. The location was very remote, 20 miles from the nearest town down winding dirt roads. But that's exactly what we wanted. A chance to unplug from society and immerse ourselves in nature. After a long 4-hour drive, we arrived at our destination deep in the woods. I'll admit that last 10 miles of the drive on narrow, unpaved back roads gave me the creeps. The dense forest canopy blocked out most sunlight, and we didn't pass a single car or structure. I felt totally isolated. Eventually, we found the small dirt road leading to the cabin. It was overgrown and barely visible, but we pushed forward and soon arrived at the charming log structure tucked away in the woods. As we got out of the car, the air was eerily still and silent. No birds chirping. No leaves rustling. Just the sound of the car doors closing echoed through the trees. We headed inside and found the cabin layout to match the listing photos. The living room had huge picture windows looking out into the woods. The loft had a cozy sitting area and extra bed. The bedrooms were small but sufficient. Yes, it was a bit dusty, but nothing unexpected for a remote cabin rental. We settled in, unpacked our bags, and started a fire in the stone fireplace. Soon the cabin filled with warmth and the smell of burning wood. That first night was delightful. We cooked a big dinner in the kitchen, laughed and told stories around the fire, and drank into the wee hours of the morning. We all passed out in the living room, looking forward to the fun day of hiking we had planned for tomorrow. The next morning, something felt off. I awoke before the others to use the bathroom. As I walked down the hall in the dim morning light, a chill ran down my spine. Goosebumps covered my arms. It felt as if I was being watched from the shadows. Outside, the woods were eerily devoid of noise. No bird songs or rustling leaves, just dead silence. When I entered the kitchen and flipped on the light, my heart dropped. Scratch marks covered the inside of the back door. Jagged, deep gouges as if something with huge claws had tried to dig its way inside. I checked the door, still locked tight with no signs of forced entry. I took pictures of the scratches, contemplating whether I should wake the others. But I decided not to alarm them just yet. Could it have been a bear or wolf passing through in the night? Surely we would have heard something trying to break in, right? Throughout the day, I had this growing sense of fearfulness. I kept noticing odd occurrences around the cabin. Knocking sounds coming from the basement when everyone was upstairs. Doors creaking open slowly on their own while we were sitting out on the porch. Quiet rustling noises coming from the loft space above the living room where no one slept. Movement out of the corner of my eye as if someone was lurking just out of sight. We were being watched. I felt it deep in my bones. That night, none of us could sleep. There were noises everywhere. Thumping, rattling, scratching from all over the cabin. It sounded like someone or something was moving through the house, testing every entry, looking for a way inside. We huddled together in the living room, keeping all lights on. No one wanted to leave the group to use the bathroom or get water. We were trapped. That's when we heard it. An inhuman scream coming from just outside the cabin that turned our blood to ice. In that moment, we all froze in sheer terror. This was no animal. It was something sinister and intelligent, and it wanted us. As the sun rose the next day, we wasted no time packing up the car. We were getting out of there. During the day, the woods appeared peaceful, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As I did one final sweep of the bedrooms, something caught my eye under the bed. What looked like deep claw marks gouged into the wooden floor. Gashes that were most certainly not in any of the listing photos. Something evil had been here. The drive out felt endless. No one spoke a word. The only sound was the crunching of gravel under tires as we sped down winding dirt roads. Finally, we reached paved road and breathed a sigh of relief. To this day, I have no idea what sinister presence dwells in those woods, but it wanted us out, and will never return. We later learned that others had reported strange occurrences in that cabin, but the listing never mentioned anything. If you find a cabin in the woods, do yourself a favor. Keep driving. Some places are better left alone. Thanks for listening in. If you like these stories and want to hear more, then please subscribe and like and support this new channel. We have more stories for you to listen to.